Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness Podcast. Episode 162 is here, and today I'm joined by Mike Schiff. Mike is an engineer by day and a gym owner and coach by night, as well as a father of two. And he spends a lot of his time helping other fathers reclaim their life and get their fitness back on track. Mike has done some incredible fitness feats, including recently preparing for an Ironman, which will be coming up in Florida here in the next few weeks. But in this conversation, we dive into fitness habits, routines, why we struggle sometimes, how to make it simple, becoming a father, as well as still wanting to be fit as a father, which I think is a valuable thing to have, and then the mindset that goes with pursuing and chasing hard things on a regular basis. So it's a very fun and challenging conversation that I think you can get something out of for yourself, especially if you're looking to incorporate or add fitness into your life. This is definitely one for you. Otherwise, I think you're still going to find some pieces of how Mike approaches everyday activity as a useful thing for you in your journey. Before we get to the conversation, though, I do want to let you know I have opened up my coaching. I have 2 spots available to close out the year. So if you're looking to level up your game and take yourself to the next level, reach on out, shoot me an email, charles@theedgeofgreatnessproject.com. I'd love to hear what you got going on and where and how I might be able to help. So connect with me there. The other thing is if you've enjoyed these conversations, 162 of them to this point, I would love it if you would subscribe and share this with a friend. Let's keep growing this show. Let's keep adding people to this community, and I'd love to see this thing take off here in the new year. So enjoy today's conversation. Here he is, Mike Schiff.
Be a sponge and then bring the juice.
By focusing on your improvement, by focusing on your progress, and eliminating any fixed mindset that you may have and acts of perfectionism, then you encourage your own mastery.
On some level, we do what we want to do 24 hours a day. Now, sometimes it may not seem like that, but if I'm choosing to work instead of sleep, what I'm actually saying is keeping my job is more important than sleeping.
I'm tired of this. I'm tired of getting beat. What can I do to get over this hump? So mentally, that's when I kind of put that forefront, like, hey, it's either all or nothing.
I like to put failure in quotations because I don't believe that failure is true failure if you're looking at it with the right mindset.
The truth is, the journey to greatness is hard. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes focus, and every day you have to decide what you value, what you want to pursue, and what you want to achieve. And if you dig deep enough, if you push hard enough, we all have what it takes to be great. Welcome to the Edge of Greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, engineer, gym owner, coach, leader of men, Mike Schiff. Mike, thanks so much for taking time to join me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. I'm real excited here to dive in. I want to touch a lot about fitness and a lot about how we can make ourselves physically better. But I want to start first let's start with a real simple question that I think everyone wants to know. Where do most people miss when it comes to their physical fitness?
That's a good question. I think the thing people probably struggle with the most is, from what I've seen working with clients, is diet.
Okay.
Honestly, I think most people, have a rough idea what they should do. It's actually executing that and following through with that. That's a lot harder, said than done. But yeah, I think for most of my clients, it's on the nutrition side. Anybody can go and look up an easy enough workout program, and just about any program is going to get you some results, right? As long as you know where you're headed or where your target is. It's when people actually start tracking what they eat and paying attention to that, they realize, man, I'm way overeating what I thought I should be.
So what are some tricks that you utilize to make sure that you stay on track when it comes to nutrition?
For me, I've been doing this for a really long time, so it kind of just comes natural for me at this point. But some of the things that I leverage are intermittent fasting, not for any real reason other than I feel pretty good on it. And it helps me to not overeat, right? So if I'm only eating 2 meals a day versus 3, I can have 2 bigger meals and I'm not hungry until lunchtime most days anyways. So that works for me. I have clients that do that. I have other clients who don't. It's, really just personal preference, but that's one. And then the other thing that I think for me is a big hack in terms of diet is removing temptation, right? So it's really hard, especially when you have young kids, to not have snacks just around the house. And, every time you open the pantry or you open the fridge, you want to grab, a handful of potato chips or whatever. So we just, one thing we've done really well is if we have snacks in their house, they're healthy options, fruit, apples, stuff like that, or we just don't have it, right? We just don't buy it. So if I can be disciplined for an hour at the grocery store, I don't have to be disciplined 40 times a day when I walk by my pantry or open my fridge to get a drink.
Yeah, no, I think that's a huge challenge for a lot of people because it's that ease and the convenience. And when you're staring at something that's salty or sweet and you're like, oh, I could grab some peppers or some, grapes, or I could grab this sweet, beautiful, not healthy, going to go down so good type of thing. It's just, that's just asking a lot at that point. You said something interesting earlier that I want to come back to. It was in your first answer. You said anyone can find fitness information anywhere anymore. But how do we go about deciphering what's good information and what's just not something we should be listening to?
That's a good question. There is a lot of suspect advice out there, I'll say. I think you got to evaluate the source, right? Try to understand, where that's coming from. But then at the same time, it does take a little bit of trial and error. I've done every workout split under the sun, just about, and they all work. They all have, different levels of commitment required, 6 days a week, 3 days a week. And it depends on your goals, right? If you want to be a bodybuilder, you're not going to be on a, 3 days a week. That's it, but for the general population, if you just want to be healthy, I recommend, and what I do with my own clients is finding a program that fits your lifestyle and, has the general goals that you're looking for, whether that's, you want to be a marathon runner or you want to be, just more generally physically fit, finding a program that fits within those parameters. Right. And then like I said, a lot of trial and error and giving it time, right? Because a lot of people will try a program. Maybe they do it for a week or two and say, oh, I'm not seeing any results. It's like, you got to price it in a little bit, right? Of saying like, hey, it might be 6-12 months before you see like very significant changes depending on where you're at.
Yeah, I think that fitness is one of the most incredible ways to understand and develop delayed gratification because there's nothing in fitness that comes fast at all. Like no matter how hard you work or how hard you try, it's a slow grind. How has that slow grind, that delayed gratification helped you in other areas of your life?
I'd say a lot, especially, just using like my social media business, for example, right? Of like, I've been posting daily without missing a day for almost 2 years now. Right. And that fitness side of like, I went to the gym for 6 days a week for, 8 straight years, roughly. Before I started doing that, that translates over to where you can kind of see through something of like, hey, this isn't necessarily going to pay off today. It might not pay off tomorrow. It might not pay off for a year. But if you can keep going, one of my mentors told me, there's ups and downs. It's a matter of who can keep going when it's in those down moments are the ones who are ultimately going to be successful.
Yeah, no. And speaking of your Twitter growth and your online growth, you recently surpassed 25,000 followers on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the pace that went, because you said you've been posting daily for 2 years now, and I see people all the time getting upset and frustrated. They're at a couple thousand followers. They're not even at 1,000 followers, but they've only been posting for 6 weeks. Like, talk to me about your growth and how that's come about.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I think the growth has been not typical, right? I think that's probably a little faster than even most people would expect. I would say that's probably due to partially luck, right? I had a few viral posts, right? And then connecting with the right people in the space, and not for the sense of to grow, but just to build those relationships. And I think that's something a lot of people get wrong, is they're kind of reaching out like, oh, how can I, get something, versus how can I just build a relationship and get to know these people in the space. So I've got, quite a few people that have, 5 times the followers I do, and if they shout you out, you get, people start to recognize you. And, but that's not to say there hasn't been, it's really easy to get caught up on that follower count, and you just want to, there's been a lot of times where I'm just like months at a time, barely growing. But I don't get too worried about that, right? Because I'm more worried about the message and trying to impact the people that are following me. If more people, obviously I want more people to hear that message, but I've still got 20-some thousand people who I can help today.
Right. I think that's something important to remember too, is if you focus on the quality of the message versus the outcome of the message, and that's the follower count, then you're going to end up eventually kind of feeding into that growth anyway, right? Mm-hmm. If you just start putting out crap because you want to grow, I find it interesting how that kind of dynamic works. So talk to me about your process for creation when it comes to putting content out there. What are you looking to do with the stuff you put online?
Yeah. So it's a mix, I think it's a mix of educational, trying to provide knowledge or information to people, but a big piece of it is motivation, right? And encouragement. I try to share my own story, what I'm doing, what I'm training for, that kind of thing. And then use that as like trying to almost be an example more than anything, right? Not that I have it all figured out. I definitely will never claim that, but trying to show other dads, especially, kind of like what's possible in their lives.
Yeah. Speaking of like the motivation side of things, I often see you posting stuff at like 3 or 4 in the morning and getting started to go your training and stuff like that. But what time do you go to sleep? Like, how does that work for you? Like, are you missing all that, or is that just not happening right now? What are we doing?
Yeah. So I've been doing the early morning thing for a long time. I've had to ramp that up with the Ironman training, but for a long time, I was 4 a.m. right workouts. And I just seem to operate better. I like winning the morning, right? Of getting ahead of things and getting it knocked out, because even before I had kids, it was like you come home, you get off work, you're like, all right, now I got to go to the gym. The gym is just a madhouse for starters. And then you get out of the gym, you got to get dinner made up, you got to get cleaned up. By that time, it's ready to go to bed. You have no evening besides, eating and going to the gym. So I just started going in the morning, and then just kind of kept creeping up earlier and earlier because my gym was 24/7. And now that I have kids, it's become even more important, because those early mornings are when I can focus on my health without sacrificing time with the family. So 4 to 7 p.m., my kids go to bed. They're young, but they go to bed around 7:30. 4 to 7 is like blocked off of my calendar. Like, it's family time. I'm not doing any work. I'm just hanging out with them. And then after that, I'm just kind of winding down for the night, right? And I'm usually in bed by 8:30 or 9, so I can get up at sometime between 3 and 4 in the morning, depending on what I've got to do the next day.
So what's your message for all the dads out there who they're finding it hard to make time for them in their health journey? Like, what's the message to send to them to help them realize that there is time, we just have to find it? How do you go about getting that through to them?
I think it depends on each individual person, but if we're all being really honest with ourselves, right, that's the first thing you have to do is you have to take an honest look at things and say, we could all get up a half hour, 45 minutes early and get a workout in before the rest of the family wakes up. Right. I'm never my best self when I let my kids wake me up. Right. Or my family gets up and then, my daughter's coming in my room at 6 a.m. If I'm the rare day I'm going to sleep in. So I just kind of said, I'm not doing that anymore. Right. But if we're being really honest, 5 o'clock is in my mind, not that early. Right. And so one thing I like to say is most people are not, they say, oh, well, you're a morning person. I'm like, no, I'm just a really disciplined nighttime person. Right. So I get to bed at a decent time. I don't scroll on my phone for hours. I'm not watching TV until 11, 12 o'clock. 8:30 rolls around and my notification goes off on my phone, says, hey, it's time to wind down for the night. So I put my phone to the side and maybe have a half hour or so where I lay there and chat with my wife or read the Bible, whatever I'm doing. And then I'm going to bed. Right. And so then you can get 7 hours and still be up at 4 a.m. And that gives you plenty of time to get a workout in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What's been the hardest part of your change in your fitness journey since having kids, since becoming a father?
Honestly, it's not changed a whole lot because I had the habits in place before the kids were born. And I've tweeted about that quite a few times of young men start now, get these habits in place so that you're not trying to do this when you've got a newborn, or you don't, because it will compound on you, right, really quick. Of if you go 5 years without going to the gym, and you know how it is being a dad, you're eating the kids' leftovers and all that stuff. And then now all of a sudden you look down, and if you gain 5 pounds a year for 5 years, you've got 25 pounds that you've put on. And you have no idea where to start. And it looks impossible. Oh, I'm so intimidated. Versus if you just start and keep things on track throughout. And there's been nights where I've had to pivot, right? And my kid's been up 4 times in the middle of the night, and you just have to be adaptable. I think that's the one thing that I've had to do more is being more adaptable, right? I've been up 4 times overnight. So instead of doing a 2-hour bike ride, I'm just going to get up and go for a 30-minute walk and stretch. I'll get the bike ride some other time. So I like to say, fatherhood requires you to be adaptable. Definitely.
I like that way of thinking because I kind of went through one of those this weekend. I always do my leg day on Saturday, and I try to put it in between some of the games that I'm watching and some of the time I'm doing with the family. Well, this weekend with my son's birthday, it got a little crazy, got a little hectic. And the next thing you know, I'm 30 minutes till game time of the game I want to watch that night. So I'm you know what? I'm going to go out to the gym. I'm going to do 30 minutes, and that's going to be what I do today, and that's going to be enough. And I felt good. I felt like I got enough in to at least feel like I didn't waste a day of not working out. And I think that adaptability piece is crucial for that consistency. I guess my next follow-up for this is, people say it's hard when you have kids. They say it's difficult to be consistent, but I've found there's been some really good things that have come from working out with my kids around and seeing that. What's been the best thing that's changed since becoming a father and then continuing as a fit dad?
Yeah, I think, becoming a dad has just made the purpose of the working out all that more important, right? Before I was doing it just to stay healthy. Now I'm doing it because I want to be able to, keep up with them when they're in high school, right? And coach their high school, sports or whatever it is, or, go out and throw catch with them. I think the best change, I think it's just seeing my kids kind of embrace, even at a young age, right? So I own a gym. The kids go with me on occasion to the gym. They love, Dad, I want to go see Dad's gym, and so they're there. They're goofing around. My son's a year and a half old, and he tries to go over and pick up the 100-pound dumbbells, and I'm like, so it's just building those memories and hopefully passing those healthy habits on to them has been really awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best part for me too. Is when my daughter comes up and goes, "We gonna do push-ups today?" Or, I'm going out to the gym to do my workout, and she goes, "I want to do pull-ups." So she's like, wants me to put her up on the bar and hang out, and I'm like, you know what? It's slower for me. I'm not getting quite as much done all the time, but that's fine because they're seeing the habit, they're building the habit, they're enjoying the process, and a lot of times we just dread that process.
Yeah.
And the joy that comes from them being a part of it just makes it that much easier to do. So speaking of joy and the dread of doing the hard thing, which is working out, how do you balance getting your clients to work hard, but find joy in that work?
So I think the biggest thing is just paying attention to how you feel afterwards. Right. So I'll have a client, text me and celebrating little wins like, I did 15 push-ups where last time when we started a month ago, I could only do 8. And, and making sure that they recognize like, hey, that is a big win. That is a big sign of progress, right? You just doubled your work capacity, right? So I think it's that the biggest thing, and not getting, because it's really easy to look at the number on the scale and maybe it's not moving, but you say, hey, like you're always like trying to find a little win, right? And that, I think that's the biggest thing, to keep finding that joy in those little moments.
Yeah,
or those little wins, I should say.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's important because we just talked about earlier how this is just a game of delayed gratification. And if you can't find the little wins, you're going to be holding on to a lot of crap for a long time. So I like that idea to find the little wins. I saw you posted something that said simply, things aren't going to go to plan. How do you're going to mess things up. They're not going to go to plan. How do you adapt when things go sideways?
I think I tend to look at things very analytically, using my engineering brain a little bit, right? Of just trying to understand the information available or what's going on, and then reacting or acting as quickly as possible, and then rinse and repeat, right? So I think in terms of feedback loops. So, all right, I tried something, it didn't work. How quickly can I take that information, pivot, try something different, rinse and repeat? The faster you can iterate on that, the faster you're going to get where you need to be, versus sitting there and wallowing in your pity, right? Of, oh, this didn't, and kind of tying it back to an example, right? Oh, my daughter woke me up 4 times last night, and you could easily just sit there and feel bad for yourself and then sleep in, and then your whole day's shot, right? Versus, well, I'm going to go for a walk and, maybe do a few push-ups and chug some water. And now all of a sudden I feel a little bit better. Like I'm still probably tired, like that's part of it, but you don't feel as bad as if you didn't. And you have to have a little bit of that right mindset, I think, to go into that and recognize that, like, hey, things aren't going to go your way. Nothing is going to go to plan, or they rarely do. Right. So you got to kind of be able to adjust and go back to that adaptability. Right.
So there's this interesting thing I've been seeing a lot of lately where there's one side of the spectrum that says you need to stick to it forever and you got to keep working it and working it and working it. And that's how you get ahead, right? It's that consistency over time, and you just got to keep pounding away. There's this other side that I've been having conversations with that's talking about this quitting fast, right? You have to learn how to quit and when to quit. How do you go about balancing when to stick to something and keep working through it, and then going, okay, well, this isn't actually working. Let's pivot and change. Because you talked about making a pivot, talked about making a change, but we know there's some consistency to part of this process. So how do you balance that out between when do I quit and pivot and when do I stick to it?
I'm trying to think of the last time I actually quit something. I think if you know what you want, right, you're not going to just quit all out, right? But I think, it depends on what you're talking about. But I think there are things that ventures you might go out in life, right, and need to try, you say, hey, cut my losses. I'm not going to keep going down this route. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. But I mean, for me, most of my goals are all things that are never going to change, right? Be a good father, be a good husband, be a good Christian, take care of my health, be a good coach, all those things. So they're a little more vague goals, right? So I'm never going to just give up on those, but I don't think I'll ever, throwing the flag on any of those things, right? And to be honest, that's pretty much what everything centers around.
Yeah.
So.
No, I like that. I think that's cool. There's another thing that you've talked about here is you mentioned that the morning in a post, I think it was maybe this morning actually, that you're going to find a better balance next time you train for an Ironman. Mm-hmm. What parts of the balance have been off for you in this?
And I think it's more personal preference for me, because I've been doing a lot of cardio, obviously, but up to this point, so I played college soccer, got really burnt out on running, and so then once I graduated almost 10 years ago now, I just went all in on lifting, right? And then I did that for up until a year ago. I probably ran less than 10 times, in that time span. And so now I feel like I've got a good base level of cardiovascular endurance training. I'm going to try to mix back in more lifting and make that, because that's what I really enjoy. I think everyone should do some form of cardio. There's definitely benefits to it, but it's not what gets me hopping out of bed in the morning and excited. So that with the Ironman training, there's been a lot of days where I've just had to drag myself out of bed a little bit. I'd say more often than not, I'm not looking forward to training anymore, or at least over the last few months, because I'm just like, I'm ready for the event. I just want it to be here. So going forward, I think I want to do more Ironmans, but I want to find a better balance to where I can maintain my current level of fitness by, doing a little less cardio and a little more lifting and enjoying it a little more.
No, I can appreciate that. I'm not exactly the long distance endurance type. I do think I need to do more of that, to be honest. I think if I'm going to be honest with where my health is at, strength is not the problem. The weight room's not the problem. It's getting the cardio pieces in and actually getting out and running and hitting the pavement a little bit. But You know, I'm a bigger guy. It doesn't really work for me. It hurts a little bit. So I got to get that discipline going, because you mentioned the fact that you don't look forward to it, but you do it. And I think that's such an important piece when it comes to anything that we're pursuing that we want to be good at or we want to find success in. How do you talk yourself into doing the thing that you don't want to do in the moment?
Yeah. I have a saying, I say discipline doesn't debate, right? So
I like that.
I don't debate with myself, right? I don't give myself a choice. Like when I get up in the morning, my alarm goes off and I don't think twice about it. I just go, right? Because if you can, that voice in your head can talk you out of just about anything, right? You can rationalize your way out of doing anything you don't want to do. And so I just make those split second decisions of, my alarm goes off at 3:30. I have to make the decision, right, to not hit snooze or not turn it off and go back in bed. But once I make that decision, it's done, right? And so I don't go back and, you know, ponder on it and, you know, think about it. I think that's the biggest thing that I have. And then in the way I do that, right, is reminding myself of, hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Right. I have a strong why behind the motivation. And that's stronger than the desire to get back in bed. So.
No, I think that's an important piece, is holding on to that why. I think that gives us a lot to reach for when it really starts to get hard, because any journey that you're on that's meaningful is going to be hard at some point. So I think knowing that why is important. I also saw a post here recently that you mentioned that you're already planning for what comes after Ironman Florida. So how do you balance looking towards what's next and staying present in the moment that you're currently in?
Yeah, that's a tough one, even in life, right? Me and my wife were talking about this the other day, is like, you know, our kids are young, they're 3 and 1.5, and we've got plans, right, for our future and what we want our life to look like. And, you know, we're like, well, you know, my wife could go back to work and, you know, we could have our house paid off in X amount of years and all this stuff. And then, you know, we were all excited, and I came back to her and I was like, we need to pump the brakes a little bit, right? Of like, focus on right now. Our most important job is raising these kids and being mom and dad. And yeah, sure, we can maybe make more money. You know, we could have a bigger house, whatever, like all kind of superficial things. So that kind of ties back to life. But I think it takes a little bit of both, right? Of like, I like to say like content, but not complacent, right? So kind of happy where you're at. And that's where I am with the Ironman stuff. Like I'm in a good spot with the Ironman, but I'm also not complacent, where I'm not thinking of how can I keep moving forward? How do I keep making progress? And I think that applies to life too. And it's easy to kind of wish away what you have right now if you're not careful. But you also want to have a plan. So it does take a little bit of effort to do both.
Yeah, no, I can feel that, because, you know, with 3 little ones myself, it's really easy to feel like, man, when they're a little older, this will be, I can do these things and this, I can do that. And this will be, and then I'm like, whoa, hold on. We enjoy this time. They're only with me for so long. They're only little for so long. I know it's hard at times, and there's things that I'd like to be doing that this is taken away from, but this too shall pass, and we gotta stay present with it. And I like that you gotta have an eye on the future, but you gotta stay where your feet are, and you gotta have that balance. So I love that you're looking forward to what's next, but I just was curious as how you balance that out and stay present and focused in the moment. So there's another interesting thing that I love, and this is something that I often find myself coming back to as well, as knowledge isn't power, it's potential. And you mentioned this the other day, and you got to do something with it. So what are some of your favorite ways to start to implement new knowledge?
So I think the for me, and it kind of goes back to those feedback loops, right? Of trial and error, and just, for a little while I did, full body workout splits, right? And just like, can I hit each muscle group, in one workout, right? A whole body workout, couple sets to failure basically on every workout, and see how I feel. And I was like, I kind of like this style workout, right? So I have that in my arsenal. And I can give someone feedback if they say, hey, what do you think about this? What are your pros and cons of this versus, going and, anybody can read a textbook and say, here's this information, right? But I think putting it into practice is key. And it's just really just doing it, right? That's what it comes down to. And I feel like people struggle with that. I don't know why. This is the $1 million question, I think, is I talk about this in a lot of my circles of like, why do some people will actually do the work and others just seem to never get to that point? And I think I think it comes down to ultimately that why again, but I still haven't figured out the exact formula or how to tell if somebody's going to be that person or not, because I've had people that are exact same starting points and, one just never leaves that point and the other guy is, thriving, so I think that's the $1 million question is how do you differentiate between those two guys?
I think that's important. And, I always look at it this way, everyone knows they need to jump in the pool to go swimming, but some people get to the edge and they stand there and then they dip their toe and then they get their ankle in and then they sit on the edge and the other person just jumps right in. So like, how do we get to the point where everybody's just jumping in and seeing what happens? And then we'll figure it out as we go. And I think that you're right, that that's the $1 million question. If we can figure out why some people jump and some people watch, then maybe we're going to change a lot of lives. Things are going to get a lot better. So, as we begin to wind down, I got an interesting question for you. So, and this is kind of one that's been kind of in the back of my mind for a while. And since I got a fitness person on here, I'm gonna dive into it. The fitness information that's out there has been great for general growth and the advancement of more people being active. I think there's a lot of people who are actually taking their health seriously, who are trying to get better. You can find anything you want by searching it online and you can find it. But what's the worst thing that fitness Twitter and Instagram has done for average people when it comes to wanting to get healthy?
The thing that I don't like is it's all very, just like life, it's very nuanced, right? And the people who pick their hill and say, I'm going to die on this hill, like this is the answer, the way, you have to do it my way, or there's no other option, right? But if you're an average person and you go on Twitter, well, you see one guy that says you have to eat carnivore, this is the only way to be healthy. And then you have somebody over here that's like seed oils are the devil, and you don't know what to think, right? You're just like overwhelmed and you're like, well, I don't know if this guy's right. When in reality, I mean, yeah, if you could be perfectly optimal, yeah, there might be some things, but like, let's just be honest, we're regular people. I'm just a normal dad, trying to help other dads live healthier and be better fathers. And I eat, I won't say junk food, but like, I'll go out to Chipotle, right? Or whatever. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying that but that's not like the sexy thing, right? So you have these like factions, I guess, that I think just muddy the water for people and make people not sure what to do, when in reality, they just need to move a little bit more and eat a little bit less and make a little bit better choices, and they'd start seeing progress, right?
Yeah, no, I love that answer. And I think that that's such an important piece because, when it comes down to it, this weekend I had way more donuts than I should because my son wanted donuts for his birthday, and I ate crap at the zoo, and it's just, but that's not the end of the world because I know I'm going to get back to work. I'm going to get back to eating right. I'm going to do the little things I need to correct those so I can live my life and be okay with having fun and enjoying time with family and not be stuck to this, well, that's not 100% within this little, like I have to follow this one way only. And I think that that's the big thing that you see, like you said on Twitter and Instagram, is that it's black and white. It's this way or that way, or you're wrong or you're right. And there's more to it than that. There's some nuances in there. And so,
and what you talked about too is the momentum, right? Of you can have those days where, maybe you eat bad, right? But you can't let that compound into 2-3 weeks or months into. So, we had a guy, I was working with a guy, and he went on a walk. We were just like, hey, let's just get moving. Let's just get ourselves moving. And it was like, he walked 19 days in a row and he missed a day and then fell off, just kind of ghost. Right. And he played that mental game of like, the streak was more important than what he was actually trying to accomplish. And once that streak was over, he just shame, right, came in. And it's like, I told him even before that, I was like, hey, I'd be more proud of you if the streak's going to end one day, right? You can't keep it going forever. I said, I'll be more proud of you if you don't miss twice in a row, right? If you get back on the horse the day after you miss. Didn't end up happening with this particular guy. But I think that's something else that people struggle with, of like, oh, I was doing really great with my diet and I've been hitting the gym really hard. And then they go out or go to a tailgate party, right, and have some pizza and beer, and then all of a sudden that just spirals out of control. That negative momentum just plummets them, versus taking a never miss twice kind of mentality of like, a lot of times after days like what you just described, I'll just fast. I'll be like, I'm just gonna wait till I'll just eat dinner tonight, like I'll be cool, I'll be fine, no big deal. Rather than, oh, well, I ate bad yesterday, I'm just going to go ahead and eat the rest of the donuts that were, left over from yesterday or whatever. I'm like, no, just pitch those donuts out, get them out of here, and, start back up and get going again right after it.
Yeah, no, I think that there's some ways to allow yourself to slide and have fun and live and be a human, right? Because you're going to have those moments. And this is a perfect time for this conversation, actually, because we're getting into the grand streak of all the holidays. You've got Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all coming up in a row. And if you're like me, I've got 2 birthdays in there too for my 2 daughters. Their birthdays are coming up, and my son's birthday was this weekend. So I'm like stacked with all kinds of cake and crap, and it's just going to be a mess for the next few months. But the never miss twice, I think, gives people hope to how to navigate some of those holiday seasons, because let's be honest, we still want to be social. We still want to be around people. We still want to go and enjoy, oh, that cake looks nice. Let's have a piece of cake. Let's have a drink with my friends if you like to drink. Like, let's not lose those opportunities. So how do you coach through the holidays and how to manage some of those things?
Yeah, so for me, it's really just about being conscious of your decisions, right? And I'm on autopilot at this point for most of my life, right? But I've been doing it for 10 plus years. But when your autopilot has been, programmed terribly, it's like, how can we reprogram that? And the way to do that is take back control more of those decisions. So, hey, I know Saturday we have a Thanksgiving get together. I'm going to probably eat more than I should, maybe should. And yeah, that's perfectly fine. I tell them go for it. But what I say is like, can you skip breakfast or lunch that day and just have like the one big meal? Oh yeah. You know what? I probably could do that. And then, I message them afterwards and say, hey, how do you feel? Oh man, I feel okay, or whatever, or I'll message them the next day, recommend maybe, hey, you skip breakfast today, or, do you feel hungry in the morning? No. All right, cool. Don't eat, right? Like, don't, just because it's breakfast time doesn't mean you have to eat breakfast. So I think it's just getting more aware and more conscious and taking control of those decisions and planning right around that, of knowing, hey, I'm going to probably splurge a little bit this weekend. So I'm going to be really diligent through the week, right? Because weight loss is all about averages. And on a weekly average, if I can keep my calories down, I can continue to hit my goals. So it's, all right, maybe we cut back a little bit throughout the week and, save some of those calories for Saturday. And then by the time next Tuesday runs around, you'll be right back where you need to be.
Yeah, I think the mindfulness piece is crucial, because it's not like the party just surprises you. It's not like, oh wait, hey, the party's here today. I'm screwed. I've been eating so much all week, and now I got to eat more. Plan ahead. I like that. Just cut a little bit out on the front end, cut a little bit out on the back end. Enjoy the party. Don't feel bad about it. And then when it's over, we got another week. Let's get back to it. Let's get back to the horse.
Yeah, it goes back to that not debating either, right? You set a plan and you decide, a week in advance, here's what I'm going to do. Now let's go execute, right? You don't then, I know I said I was going to do that. It's like, no, you just do what you say, right? And as long as what you say incorporates those things and it fits within the plan, then no big deal. You don't have to, then you're not, shaming yourself or feeling guilty because you had some ice cream and pie. Like, you're like, no, that was always part of the plan. We're good to go.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's great. Well, Mike, man, this has been an awesome conversation. I've absolutely enjoyed it. What I want to do before we get off is give you an opportunity to share where my audience can connect with you, follow in your journey, see what you're doing next, and maybe even, connect if they need some help with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am at Mike Schiff _ on Twitter and Instagram. So I've started posting almost daily on Instagram, trying to share more video content over there. I'm just all about trying to encourage other dads to be the best they can. I think a generation of committed fathers and healthy fathers can make a huge difference in the world. So, I think it starts with ourselves, and then our families, and then our communities is kind of how we change the world. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've been enjoying your content for a while now. I think you're doing a great job, and I'm happy to put all that stuff in the show notes so that my listeners can follow along and see what you're doing next. But it's been awesome. Thank you so much for taking time and joining me. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars. Fall flat in your face. Remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. If you haven't yet, please take a minute now to subscribe and review our show. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But remember, no matter what happens, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast.